still out in my mind. I mean, I think it's interesting that, as a species, we have been able to separate ourselves from the Earth. And that seems kind of odd to me, even with the miracle of consciousness, that we were able to make this jump where we became alienated, so alienated from the natural environment that we could kind of do the abuse to it that we've been doing. And I think some of the ideas that people like Michael Sarian and David Icke work with are fascinating, but I have no idea how to verify them. And it's also possible what they're talking about is more, they've kind of reified or literalized this idea of a kind of reptilian alien, when it may be more that that's like our ancient reptilian aspect of our brain, which is still in a lot of cases running the show and is leading us to make very short-term decisions rather than making the type of long-term decisions that we now need to make to ensure our own survival. You didn't ask for before, did you?
No. Do you think some of the problems of consciousness right now have to do with human relationships with insects? Particularly the ones they hate the most?
Actually, I think it might have something to do with the human relationship with parasites, which is something that David Wolf, she mentioned, is very interested in. That it's possible. I mean, when you work with like ayahuasca and psilocybin mushrooms, you recognize that plants have a form of consciousness, and these plants seem to be like teacher plants that kind of work with us. But then if you look at, for instance, the diet in the U.S. and how it's so unhealthy, and people are eating all this like starch and cheese and stuff all the time, what are they kind of doing? They're actually feeding these parasites, especially the candida, the yeast, and so on. But what if those those entities have their own type of consciousness? So they begin to kind of become mind parasites also, and begin to shift our behavior to support more and more kind of degraded activity. We just become kind of like these, lying around on our couch watching the baseball game farms for them. I honestly think something like that. The more I've thought about that idea since David and a couple other people introduced it to me, I think it's quite possible that something like that is happening. We actually have to, purify our whole biophysical system in order to clear the cobwebs out of our minds and begin to think clearly again.
I mean, that may be why one of the first things that ayahuasca does with you is give you considerable amount of vomiting and diarrhea. You purge your system, and it seems that that's a process you need to go through before the visions come through clearly. Undoubtedly, we're living in a very psychically unhealthy environment here in the West. Why did you ask about insects particularly?
Just made me think about it.
Yeah.
People become what they hate. They hate invasive insects.
Right.
And that's all.
Yeah.
People stop hating insects. They're doing their job.
Yeah.
This is invasive quality.
Yes, go ahead with your question. Sorry, who said that? I don't know. I mean, there is a bee issue though right now, isn't there?
Well, that's not that. Anyway, the question that keeps coming to me, and I'm going to ask both of you, is what are the implications? Is that you mentioned the left of the brain. Is the brain changing? And is it changing shape?
I don't think it's changing shape, and it wouldn't need to. I think the human brain is infinitely flexible. The point that Daniel made earlier, I think, is extremely important. There's a default view in our society that consciousness is generated by the brain, but that might not be so. The brain might be a vehicle or a transceiver for consciousness, having the same relationship to it as a TV set to the TV signal. That consciousness might be manifesting in this physical form. One period of the past that I've found extraordinarily interesting is in the Upper Paleolithic, when the great cave art begins to be painted, and an extraordinary change takes place in human behavior all over the world incredibly quickly. I'm totally open to the view, and I express it both in my novel and in Supernatural, that this kind of change comes from interdimensional influences which are speaking to human consciousness. I think right now we're using just a tiny fraction of the capacity of our brains, and that the real task is to wake up the potential that we already have, and it won't involve any major rewiring at all, I would say.
Somebody in the back of the, over there.
Can you talk to us a little bit about chemtrails?
It's so funny, on the plane today, I knew that somebody was going to ask about chemtrails, and then I realized that I never think about chemtrails, personally. I don't know why, it's like, there's certain things that I can't deal with, like Nostradamus, I can deal with chemtrails. I just get it for somebody else.
Yes, at the back. Gentleman with his hand up. Yeah.
Yeah, I would like to know what your view is on the work of David Wilcock, and also the explanation that my encounter might be referring to some kind of CME that's getting released that might rewrite the crystals and DNA in our brain to allow us to...
Right, so David Wilcock and the coronal mass ejection.
Yes.
I think David Wilcock is a remarkable phenomenon, and I will be watching his progress with great interest. I think he has potential to be a powerful influence for good on this planet, and we will see what comes with David. He's at an early stage of his career and his mission, and it's too early to predict where it will go. But I have no doubt, having got to know David quite well, that he is a special individual and a real human phenomenon. And I'm really interested to see where it goes. I'm really interested to see. Daniel tells me that I'm saying vague words, but actually my feelings are vague on this issue because I'm not sure what is going to happen with David in the future. But I think he has great potential. As to coronal mass ejections, I don't really know anything about them. I know that there's the sunspot cycle. I know that there's the electromagnetic field of the Earth. I know that the electromagnetic field is diminishing, and I know that we are likely to be influenced powerfully by solar activity. But where it's going to lead, I'm not sure. Perhaps Daniel has less vague words on the subject of David Wilcock.
Well, actually, I've been really wanting for a while to have a long public conversation with David Wilcock. It's kind of interesting. We always do these things that are like an hour or whatever. I'm sure almost have the hour out of our time here. But it would be good to go 3 hours or 4 hours because these ideas are so intense. It would be good to go really deep. I mean, I was very. I think when people read his stuff, it makes you very euphoric. You get excited. But then it also began to seem to me that he's kind of cherry picking the most extreme scientific hypotheses that support a very radical and in some ways a kind of pacifying perspective, where it's there's just this thing is going to happen and everybody's PO land is going to open up like a big pine cone, exploding, and we'll have a huge, extra dimensional party and whatever. And my perspective more and more is really that both in this book and the film, is that if there's any change that's going to come about, it is so much about us participating and getting beyond the blockages where we have in terms of our ego state, learning how to collaborate actually, rather than just having all these big ideals, actually bringing them into being, actually, making a regenerative culture, where we don't just waste stuff all the time. I don't think we're about to pop into the angelic realm in a few years. I don't think we'd be ready for it, personally. And then the whole thing with the coronal mass ejection is obviously, NASA even says that that's somewhere between a possibility and sometimes a probability that we might get hit by that. There's, plasma is being stored in the North and South Pole. I recommend Alexei Dmitriev's work. He looks at the whole solar system potentially going through a high energy transition. Wilcock and Hoagland reference his work a lot in their papers. But what if the sun is actually a giant cosmic intelligence? Which seems to be quite likely. Maybe the Earth also actually has a sentience. And the sun is 98% or more of the mass of the solar system. What if we're being, tenderly shepherded along by this solar intelligence? And so, if that coronal ejection is going to come, that's going to be part of almost like a sequence, of a fetal development birthing process. If you think about fetal development for human beings, it's there are chemical signals that have to be transmitted moment by moment by moment.